I guess I've always been a dabbler, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. My dad looks at the dictionary meaning and believes that that means I'm going to be superficial for in everything I do. So maybe that's the bad. But I've been fascinated by disciplines, cut across spheres and still create impact, and ideally create impact in a way that you can have multiple projects going on that feed into each other and actually strengthen each other and help you have the most impact. Back in, it started from a fairly, from pretty much all my life. So there was a time when I was fascinated with speed math and dividing 9-digit numbers by 9-digit numbers and confusing your friends that you were actually dividing their cell numbers by each other. All the way through, like day trading, my family's very limited savings on stock markets, to getting involved in some really inspiring ideas with great entrepreneurs on bringing the rigor of market-driven models to creating social impact. I think what has been common as a thread throughout has been not believing in fears and being able to try out something new because it might bring happiness and it might have impact. I do tend to be a little bit impulsive, which is again both good or bad. But I think it's I think a lot of what end up becoming larger ventures or larger opportunities start off with very small decisions. I remember being in a bookstore and seeing a copy of The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid by Dr. C.K. Prahlad of the University of Michigan, and looking at that $10 book and wondering whether I could afford the book, and reaching out and almost grabbing it and then going back and reaching out and then going back. And eventually saying, all right, let's take that shot, let's put in the $10, let's buy that book. Which in turn led to me being the first writer on what became, first external staff writer for what became one of the most prominent blogs on bottom of the pyramid, emerging markets businesses, creating another venture that provided talent to 13 companies across 5 sectors in that space. And helping start an education business and eventually advising other firms in that space. So I think a lot of these things start with really small decisions, and sometimes it's worth the risk to go by your gut and pay the $10, and hopefully the book will be good. dplay has both a design and a technology arms. Sunglass from our technology arm is trying to democratize access to high-performance design tools, where a real-time collaborative design platform, and what that means is that we're engaging an entire global community in creating new design applications and design content, and consuming design applications and design content in a very accessible way, and in educating each other. At the heart of it is a fundamentally different paradigm of a more inclusive, collaborative approach to design. One of the things that irked us and continues to irk us is that in the computation design space, or in design space with any of its facets, from architecture to product design, if you're a student or you're even at a second-year firm in the United States, you cannot afford a $15,000 software. You cannot afford to take those big chances on that the big boys can, and because of that, you're in a sense shunted out. You're invariably using pirated software, and that's just beyond the ethics. That's just a horrible way to start, and you're not part of the conversation of consuming content. What's worse, you're not even part of the conversation of creating content, because for the last 40 years, you've had a couple of companies that have really become epicenters for being the sources of content. And while they've done great work, they cannot be the only sources of innovation. And I'm at Stanford right now. Our work with Stanford, with MIT, with Princeton, with Berkeley is convincing us that there are other sources of innovation. There are people who have credible contributions to make that influence design, and we need a channel to get those ideas out to the millions of people who want to consume it for an hour, see if they like it, and maybe use it for longer. I think the people who would be fearful, and I'm not even sure that's the right word, would be people who continue to take a very parochial view of the world, who are resistant to change, either as producers of content, people who are happy to flog their legacy software, get their big check in the mail, and shunt out millions of people who are not part of the design conversation, and the people who are and for that matter, even on the side of consuming content, there are people who are probably resistant, a little bit scared of change, and wondering whether their life is going to be turned upside down by this new irritating software, and whether or not so new technologies are going to be low barrier enough that they can focus on what they do best. The technology is just an enabler. I think where I see the opportunity is in collaboration, in engaging with people who are seemingly competitors, but are actually people who, in partnership with you, can create content that creates greater value. Now that's very abstract and verbose, but just to make it more concrete, I just had a conversation with an outstanding Stanford graduate. Now they had graduation yesterday, who's developed really outstanding intellectual property that's going to improve the way we understand and consume design. And there are two ways to go about it. We could either have said, hey, these are competitors, we are not going to talk to you. But instead we had a conversation, and now we're incredibly excited about helping each other. I think that's a very transferable skill set, and whether that's reaching out to somebody in another department and looking at opportunities to collaborate, or cutting across organizations, cutting across the different countries in which offices are. I think there's an opportunity to reach out beyond what's just immediately around us, and see whether we can first bring something to the table and contribute, and potentially leverage what the other person also brings. I'd argue it's sort of the other way around. It's far scarier to be in. It's tempting, but it's far scarier to be in your own dark room, believing your own ideas, and shunting yourself from millions of people who can tell you what's wrong with your idea. I think the first thing is to think about what are the incredible assets you've just acquired that you're most excited about, and then about giving them away. 4 years ago, I started an organization called Let Me Know. A story I love telling is of a friend I met on a train who was just graduating undergrad, was unsure whether he would get a job. His dream job was a call center job that would pay him about $300 a month. And around that time, I told him about Let Me Know. I told him about this source he may want to tap into. It costed me nothing to pass on that information to him, but maybe he could do something with it. A couple of months later on, when I was at TED, he called me up and told me that he had got a job at Google. He was the first person to use the resources that the website inspire hundreds in his community. And the message that really came out to me was, I could have been the douche who was trying to keep stuff to myself, but just sharing that with, in this case, thousands of people, is forcing me to try to think of new problems to work on. That would definitely be one. Another thing that I think I deeply believe in is that I think there's a lot of talk about finding mentors, but sometimes what's equally important or more exciting is serving as a mentor. And I'm going to caveat that very quickly. I think the word mentor is too fancy a word. You don't need to be incredibly senior or successful to be a mentor. I see mentorship as a two-way process where you you're deeply invested in another person and you believe in their potential because they have been people who have believed in far before you did, and far greater than even your potential. So one of the things which I've found helpful is to find credible people far younger than me who are doing incredible things and seeing how they can ramp up and do greater things faster. And that process, I think, forces you. To make that more concrete, as an example, I had the opportunity to work with an MIT entrepreneur who was building schools in India, and I was so fascinated by that experience, as also by the struggles such incredible startups were facing in accessing talent, that I went and I created an organization that supplied talent, 13 such organizations, supplied about 45 different fellows, as we call it, from the program. Now, just to give you one example, one of my favorite stories is one of our fellows who went to a microfinance organization, and in just 9 weeks, cut the time it takes to design, to behind-the-scenes loan processing from 15 days to 9 days for about 100,000 rural customers. That company has now grown to about 700,000 customers. So we brought a 21-year-old who has impacted close to 1 million people. And also, he's gone on to have the confidence to go start his own company based on it. That's doing incredibly well. People like Samir are the entrepreneur nudge me because now I need to go do something useful. Especially in academic settings, we come in bright, excited, dreamy, because here we are in these incredible places where we can dream. We realize that we're each quirky, different, and have a story to tell. And then, just when we're graduating, we go into these established institutions and somehow fit in. It's worth reconsidering that. And at those moments when we're frustrated and we're wondering why are we doing what we're doing, why are we where we are, it's worth finding ways to not fit in and do things that just challenge norms because that's fun. And I think if anything, especially as organizations get large, despite all the talk of being flat and non-hierarchical and whatnot, ultimately organizations need to be very, very comfortable with people who don't conform, don't fit, are deeply invested in their own success, even if that means putting their success first in the organization later. And I think if you do that and allow that freedom, you as an organization will end up doing far greater. Just to make that as an example, for dplay, we've had the opportunity to put together an absolutely outstanding team that continues to inspire us. We have a 21-year-old who was applying for an internship. He done outstanding work in Italy. He had published in Wired magazine. He's really young. And he did not submit a resume. He submitted an 84-page book about all that he thought about design and had us floored. Not only have I told his story so many times, he shook up the norm of how you apply for an opportunity. I think looking at people like him, we realize that it makes sense to start with what would excite a person like that.